They didn't argue. They didn't explain. They didn't chase. They just stopped reaching. Same person, same heart. But something inside them closed. And now they feel distant, detached, almost avoidant. And you don't understand why. Because they used to be the one who cared more, the one who stayed longer, the one who tried harder. So what changed? But here's what most people miss. Empaths don't become avoidant randomly. They become avoidant after they've felt too much for too long without being met the same way. And this is where everything changes. Because by the end of this video, you're going to understand something most people never fully see. How the most emotionally open people slowly become the most emotionally distant, not by choice, but by adaptation. And I need you to pay attention, because once you understand this shift, you'll start recognizing it before it's too late. Now think about this for a moment. There's always that one person. They notice everything. Your tone, your mood, your silence. They understand you before you explain yourself. They stay, even when things get difficult. They give, even when it's not returned. And for a while, it feels effortless. Like you don't even have to try, because they're already trying for both of you. But then something subtle begins to change. Not suddenly, quietly. They stop explaining as much. They stop reacting as deeply. They still care, but they don't show it the same way. And this is where confusion begins. If this is already hitting close to home, type 1 in the comments. Not for engagement, but because recognizing this pattern means you've either seen it or lived it. Now here's where things go deeper. Because an empath is not just someone who feels more. That's too simple. An empath processes emotional reality in layers. They don't just experience moments. They connect them, patterns, repetition, consistency. And this is the part no one tells you. They are always building a map of how you show up, how you respond, how safe it feels to be themselves around you. And once that map becomes clear, their behavior shifts, not dramatically, quietly. And this is where the first change happens. You dismiss something they feel, not harshly, not intentionally, just slightly. They open up and you respond logically. They express something real and you minimize it without realizing. And to you, it feels normal. But to them, something doesn't feel aligned. And this is where everything begins. They don't react, they observe. Because one moment doesn't define a pattern, but repetition does. So it happens again and again. And each time, something inside them adjusts. They share less, they explain less, they expect less. Not because they don't care, but because they're learning how their emotions are being received. But here's what most people miss. This is not detachment. This is the beginning of protection. Now let's go deeper, because the next shift is subtle, but powerful. Emotional pressure, not obvious manipulation, just small statements. I guess I care more. You've changed. You're distant. And this is where everything changes. Because now, instead of observing you, they start questioning themselves. Am I not enough? Did I do something wrong? And this is where the damage builds. Because once an empath starts doubting their own perception, their internal clarity weakens. And this is the part no one tells you. Clarity is what makes them open. And when clarity breaks, they begin to close. Not completely, but gradually. Now, here's where boundaries start shifting. Not spoken boundaries. Internal ones, they start noticing when something feels off. But instead of confronting it, They adjust themselves. They tolerate more. They explain less. And slowly, they stop showing up as they are. And this is where everything becomes dangerous. Because they are no longer being themselves. They are being what feels acceptable. And this is the part most people never see. You didn't lose their emotions. You lost their authenticity. But here's what most people miss. Even at this stage, they're still trying, still hoping, because something is still unresolved. And unresolved emotion keeps people connected longer than clarity does. Now, here's where the shift becomes irreversible. Effort stops feeling natural and starts feeling like work. Internal work, they begin thinking more, replaying conversations, analyzing behavior, trying to understand the pattern. And this is where emotional exhaustion begins. Not suddenly, but gradually. And this is the part no one tells you. The more an empath tries to make sense of something, the more drained they become. Because they're not just feeling it, they're carrying it. And when something becomes too heavy, the mind adapts. Now, here's the turning point. They don't leave suddenly. They leave after they already left emotionally. And this is where everything changes. Because once emotional detachment begins, the connection fades from the inside. Not because they don't care, but because staying no longer feels safe. Now, let's talk about what happens next. This is the part most people misunderstand. They become avoidant, not in the way people think, not cold, not heartless, just careful. They don't open easily. They don't trust quickly. They don't invest the same way. And from the outside, it looks like distance. But internally, it's awareness. And this is where everything shifts. Because now, they are no longer reacting emotionally. They are responding consciously. And this is the part no one tells you. Avoidance is not always fear. Sometimes it's clarity. Now let's go deeper into the psychology. Because this shift is not random, it's neurological. Your brain builds emotional patterns over time. Every interaction adds to that pattern. And once a pattern becomes predictable, the brain creates a response. Approach or withdraw. And when emotional inconsistency repeats, the brain chooses protection. Not because it wants to disconnect, but because it wants stability. And this is where everything becomes clear. The empath didn't become avoidant. They became self-protective. Now let's shift perspective. If you're the one who lost them, you might think they changed. That they became distant. But that's not what happened. They became aware. And awareness changes everything. Because once someone sees the pattern clearly, they can't stay in it the same way anymore. And if you are the empath, you know the exact moment. That quiet realization, this doesn't feel right anymore. No anger, no drama, just clarity. And from that moment, everything changes. You stop explaining. You stop chasing understanding. You stop trying to fix what keeps breaking. And slowly, you pull back. Not to punish, but to protect yourself. Now, here's the truth most people don't want to hear. You can't keep someone open if they don't feel safe being open. And you can't expect someone to stay emotionally available if their availability is constantly met with inconsistency. Empaths don't need perfection. They don't need constant attention. They don't need someone who gets everything right. They need honesty, consistency, emotional safety, and if those things are missing, they will slowly become someone you no longer recognize. Not because they changed, but because they adapted. And once that adaptation becomes permanent, they don't come back the same way. Because clarity doesn't reverse into confusion. And awareness doesn't return to blindness. So if you're wondering why they became distant, why they stopped reaching, why they feel avoidant now, this is why. Not because they stopped caring, but because they finally started protecting themselves. And that is a shift that rarely goes back.